It's been a complete rollercoaster, and we've had amazing contributions from all speakers so far, but also massive input from the audience by way of questions. And now, to wrap up the day, I'm very pleased to hand over to Richard Vobes, who of course will be known to so many for giving a voice to so many people who have shone a light on things that we may not have considered very much in life, but that have definitely shaped the way that we think about things. So Richard, you're very welcome. We're very much looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming and staying right to the bitter end to hear my old voice that you can hear on YouTube any old day. I think there's like 1,000 odd videos now talking about what the troubles are in our times. I appreciate you haven't got time now to look at them all. I'm going to point to my first slide. Oh, crikey, they've taken the screen away. No, I don't. Unfortunately, I haven't any technical stuff, so it's just me having a good old natter. And the thing about going on last, somebody said, "Oh, Richard, you know, you're headlining it because you're on last." I said, no, I'm scratching around because you've all done the content that I wanted to do, talking about the Rockefellers and all of that nasty stuff, talking about all the CO2 gas and the veterinary stuff, talking about whatever Eli was talking about, and the farming business that was going on. And I thought, well, I'll talk a little bit about sovereignty, and I want to talk a bit about vision. And I think vision is the number one thing, not only in farming and food security, but for all of us into the future and where we need to be. I run a YouTube channel, as you know, and as Charles was saying, I've had over the last nearly 2.5 years now, all sorts of different people talking about all sorts of different things, including channeling aliens live on the show, in which you have to have a very open mind, treat everyone respectfully, because I don't know, I'm no expert in anything. I can just about do what Tim does and switch a camera on, but that's about it. He's far more cleverer at it than I am, and I've managed to sort of bluff my way through. But having an open mind and listening to people is something that is absolutely fundamental, I think, to understanding what's going on and then evaluating it in our own minds, because everybody's got an opinion. I have a very massive number of opinions, and you'll hear those in the monologues. A number of those are questions. But at these sort of events, people will talk, they'll give you their truths, they'll give you what they believe to be true, but ultimately, it all comes down to what you lot think. And fortunately, one of the things I've discovered in this movement is that we may have differences of opinion, but we don't shout each other down. So there may be some people in here who believe the earth is flat, and others who believe it's a spherical shape, and perhaps others who think it's something totally different, that it sort of just generates on the fly. But we can all listen to one another, and we can all go, well, you're an idiot, but on that note, but I go along with other things. Whereas in the past, I would be walking through heritage, landscape and nature on my previous sort of incarnation as the bald explorer, and I would be talking away about the wonderful trees and the grass and the history and the heritage of the land and things like that. And people would be, oh, that's lovely. And then I might just sort of flippantly put in, this man-made global warming, that's a bit of old nonsense, isn't it? And it would just be that sort of one sentence, and I would see the subscriber base disappear, bing, 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 bing. And I had friends who would say, I'm sorry, I can't associate with you now because you don't believe in climate change. And it was that black and white. And of course, we all saw that during the COVID time, where even if you just dared to say, is there a problem? Is this the best solution? And of course, we're likely to see the same in farming when it comes down to food. and I see this in the comments, anytime I make a video about farming and food security, and I might mention perhaps it's not such a good idea to eat too much nutrient-free, vitamin-deficient food that you get served up in lovely, colourful boxes that you microwave and blitz any last remaining bits of goodness in and ingest it into your body. I mean, why would you? And then suddenly, you get all these people going, well, I don't know what's wrong with supermarket food. And you realise there's a huge journey ahead, not just for us, but for these poor saps themselves. And you do think, what an uphill journey that somewhere before I was born, if you're into this sort of spiritual stuff, apparently my soul decided this would be what I would do, have this incredible upward journey and try and tell people what's going on, or at least sort of suggest there might be a better way to live. But I can tell you that doing this, Julia and I have met some incredible friends and people who are honest, they're open, they are they're thinking. What did you say? Thought-provoking. Yes, and of course, I don't mind being challenged myself. By the way, if you are tuning into my channel, just be careful you do tune into the correct one, because now I've discovered there are 3 hate channels, 2 of which represent me. One, this is high flattery, ladies and gentlemen, high flattery. You've really hit big time when somebody can be bothered to create in AI your backdrop, sit themselves in what looks like your studio. I think this microphone's... Oh, no, it's still there. And they put like a little alien head on and pretend to be, I'm Richard Phobes and I'm going to do this. Now, you might actually find that more entertaining than my show, of course. So maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that. Mark sent me one. Only yesterday, was it yesterday morning? Yeah. He sent me one. I've seen this, somebody's done a hate job on you. And what was interesting about that, this guy, because the people who do these hate jobs very rarely put their own face on the screen themselves, apart from whatever his name is. Reynard Wilson, who's 77th Brigade and admitted it. So that's really interesting. No, this guy did this hate job. I know, just as sort of sidetrack really. He did this hate job, and he said Richard Phobes started out as an actor. He was voice so-and-so in Thames Television, The Bill. And I used to do extra work on The Bill. I used to be an extra, used to do it like 3 days of the week, turn up, put on a police uniform, hang around, eat lots of cakes, all the stuff John was talking about, put on a bit of weight, get a slightly wider uniform. But sometimes you get something called special skills if you perhaps ride a bicycle or can drive a car or do anything other than just pass the camera lens. You sort of almost get an extra 20 quid. And one day they wanted someone just to be the voice of a PC on the job somewhere, ringing into the control room. So they got us with the walkie-talkies just going, yes, Delta Oscar 1, I've just spotted suspect walking into the supermarket now. And that was it. So this guy had found the clip of this little tinny voice coming into the show going, Richard Phobes was an actor, and but what was amazing is, I never used to bother to watch, because, usually I was just white shirt behind frosted glass at the end of the corridor, which was, pretty good acting, really, if you can get it. So I never used to sort of look at that kind of stuff. And so I'd never seen that clip, which was great. I also was in this thing that he highlighted up, Waiting for God. Now, you look like you are waiting for God, so you probably saw the series. How rude. It's all right, I'm on the same boat. So there was this program, Waiting for God, and I was like number one ambulance man in one of the episodes, just to sort of, they called it Category 2, Cat 1, so you got paid like 250 quid instead of 50 quid fee, which was great. And all I had today is say something like, you can't do that, sir. He was trying to come into the ambulance or whatever the thing was. Anyway, I never bothered to watch it. I've got a bit of a dry mouth. We've got a drink. Thanks. Lovely Julia, my perfect, wonderful assistant. Comes to my aid all the time, especially on cold nights in cold vans, very snugly. Anyway, so this guy who did more information than you wanted to know at that point, I do apologise. She's out of the room now, she can't hear. So, he put this together, and I just thought it was hilarious because I was just looking at these clips I couldn't be asked to go and look out for me. That was a bit of an aside, really. So running a YouTube channel, one of the other things before I get on to sovereignty and then vision, thank you very much. Oh, God. I tell you what, the quality now of fluoride has really improved. It's actually quite palatable. But arsenic, no, not so good. I can feel the nanoparticles running around me quite nicely. One of the things that Mark has said, pretty much everybody has said, we need to talk to people and get the message and what we think out. I do that on the channel all the time, but one of the things I think is very important is that we do get out face to face. These sort of meetings are good, but very often we're talking to the same crowd. People will come to me and say, "Oh, hello, Richard, nice to see you. I saw you in Bath, or I saw you in Hereford, I saw you in Winchester." It's like, will you stop bloody following me around? It's the people who haven't come, who are really, not here. And I think twice we had how many farmers are in the group, and there was only a small number. And one of the things that strikes me is we almost have to get little teams going to the farms, because I guess farmers are very busy doing whatever they do. I mean, John's still here, so perhaps not him, but many other farmers, he's already milked the cows, so that's quite easy. And he only milks it once a day, he told us, didn't he? So no, that's the way to do it. Put your feet up and... You haven't got that picture up there anymore, have you, cheeky bugger? But we really do have to get out there and sow the seeds. And that's what farmers do anyway, sow the seeds. We need to sow the seeds. And it doesn't matter how you do it. It could be very simple little questions that we can think of that, at a bus stop or in a queue to get a stamp. I was not going to say in the supermarkets, because clearly none of you guys go to a supermarket. I have not stepped in a supermarket for over a year now, and I live directly in front of a supermarket, unfortunately. And I happened to notice one of the staff that we knew who worked in there, and I said, "Oh, how's it going in there?" I said I'd never been in there for a year, for over 12 months. And she told me about the cameras that are all... So, I mean, that was quite news to me. When was that? About 4 or 5 months ago. And I started talking about this on the show, that the cameras are there. And I said, "Well, what are they there for then?" She said, "Oh, it's stock taking." I said, well, I thought it's the barcode therefore. I thought the barcode business was stock taking. I thought, no, this is just facial recognition coming in, isn't it? It's all getting your credit score up, your carbon credits and all of that. But if you are running a little YouTube channel or social media, then one of the things to get noticed, and I had to learn this when I started, is to just keep putting them up and ignore the response. Because you can get very disillusioned by people who comment, and people do get very frustrated because you feel very personal when they attack you. And they say, "No, Richard, you're absolutely wrong, you're barking mad, you're this, you're that, and blah, blah, blah," whenever you do it. But I would urge people to set up YouTube channels, because I've had 4 strikes, and that was mainly from Julia. No, not at all. She'll get me for that one. No, I've had 4 strikes. I have been demonetized now, so... I'm not getting any money. Don't feel sad for me, but there's just no money coming in at all. And I've got a wife and 2 eyelids to support, and it's just very sad. No, actually, the truth is I'm quite pleased that I'm demonetized, because I am not taking the corporate pound. And that actually is very important to me. I didn't realize it until they did pull the plug. But it is very important to me because I am talking a lot about the big corporate takeover and these big companies like Sainsbury's who want to have no farmers and want to be able to produce all this artificial food themselves that Bill Gates may well have invested in, and a number of other large corporations. And if I'm taking the money, the corporate pound, well, then you can call me a shill or controlled opposition, because it's just not right. I don't think that's right. I think that we have to be bigger, which means that's why I don't go to the supermarket. And Julia and I, once a week, we drive 8 miles to the farm shop, Charlie's farm shop in Bury in West Sussex, and then 8 miles back, and we've come back with raw milk, grass-fed, not organic, I appreciate that, but they're lovely, lovely cows, not lovely mixers and not at foot like yours, but that's the nearest one to us, and fresh meat and all of that. And actually, the thing that we discovered, and this was some time ago now, was when you go to a farm shop and you support your farmers and you buy that wonderful meat and that good food, as John was saying, you don't get hungry with everything else. And if you go to the supermarket, you know what it's like. Oh, I'll just get some crackers, I'll have some crisps, a bit of chocolate, better get some booze in, and all of that lot. Whereas in the farm shop, it's too expensive to buy fruitcake and things like that. So you just buy the essentials, but the essentials is what keeps you going. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about sovereignty, and I know Mark did say, sovereignty is all right, but food is more important, and he's absolutely right. Of course, if we can't feed ourselves, it doesn't matter how much you say, I'm a free man, I should be free. Yeah, you're free to die, mate. All right, thank you. But sovereignty and being free, I think, again, bringing this back to farmers and farming, although this relates to everybody else, but particularly farmers, and it's been said, and I'm a bit like the BBC now, full of repeats, which is one reason not to watch the bloody thing. Farmers do not really appreciate just how important they are. They've got the land, or they're tenants on the land, and they know how to grow things. Now, they may be growing things which at the moment, are not really the greatest things, like lots of commodities that Mark was listing, all that wheat and barley and what have you, although barley's quite good for beer if you're into real ale and things like that. But in the vast quantities, and then it disappears. And we spoke to some farmers a year or so ago at an event that was called, what was it called?
Which farmers?
That farming event that we did.
Groundswell.
Pardon? Groundswell, that's right, Groundswell. We spoke to this farmer, and he came up to us, and he said, I recognise you off the telly. So sorry about that. Because all of that was about, CO2 and putting it in the ground and all this. And we're going, we're really at the wrong place here. But it was fascinating. But he came up to us, and he said, the trouble with farmers at the moment is they don't think they're growing food. They're growing commodities. They don't know where it goes. And we've got a local farmer to us, and he's a very nice chap, and he's taken us for walks around his farm and what have you. And I said, what happens to your spring barley then? And he said, it goes off to the distributor. And then if it's of a certain grade, it'll go off to do such and such. And if it's another grade, it'll do animal feed or whatever it is. He didn't know. What he didn't happen was he wasn't going off to the local pub and having a lovely drink of the beer that was made with his barley and go, that's mine. Now, if you go to John's farm and you drink the milk, that's the milk that's come off the farm. You know its provenance. And this is so important, I think, that we get back to knowing the provenance. Mark, thanks. It's just one of those faces, Could be anyone. Fred was just saying, Mark was saying, that we need more farms and more local farms. And I think that's very true. We've got to get back. When Mark was young and when I was young, there were small farms around the towns. Julia and I read to each other because we don't have a television, so we sit in front of a log-burning stove. I know, don't pity us. I mean, we're demonetised, no money coming in. But we read some old 1930s farming books. People like A.G. Street and Adrian Bell and various old farmers. This probably means nothing to you, but we've been reading these old books, these old farming books. And it's what's amazing is that you go back 100 years and into some of the rural places around here, electricity had yet come in. We've only had it 100 years. That's one very, very good lifespan. And now we've got all this technology, we cannot do anything without. We're going, oh God. And yet these people at the time were going, oh, I don't know about this electricity thing. I'm not sure I'm having any of that. And they were telling, and these were sort of like their own stories. Putting in a light bulb, and it's very bright, isn't it? I'd much rather my oil lamp. I know when I go to bed, don't I? It gets dark. And you think, yeah, there was a way of life that we have lost through this. Another interesting thing that A.G. Street, who's from Wiltshire. Anyone from Wiltshire here? There we go. Near Salisbury, near Wilton in Salisbury, he used to farm, and his house is still there. We've driven past it many times. He wrote in one of his books in the sort of 1940s, just at the beginning of the war, he had an axiom, two axioms. He said, and I thought this was very good, and actually Mark sort of touched on it. The first one, he said, for farmers, an axiom is, the land comes first. The countryside must come above humans, which to me reads, we shouldn't be putting solar panels on the farms, wind farms, anything that turns it into a brownfield site that then ends up out of agriculture. That should not happen. His second axiom was that farmers should not have handouts from the government, subsidies. Or if they do, all industry should have subsidies. And the reason he said that was, it's made farmers look like the poor industry, the charitable case. And so now when we hear farmers saying, oh, I need these subsidies, yes, they've been backed into a wall, into these cul-de-sacs where they do need them now, because they've never been able to stand up on their own. And the public just look at them and think, well, you just get handouts. And when they're not given, like the news has recently said about some of these subsidies being stopped, many members of the public, I imagine, are going, yeah, well, you had it easy, didn't you? Whereas I've had to run my business, nobody helped me, maybe furlough during lockdown and all that. And of course, that in itself has lowered the price of what the value of food really is. And of course, when you see the comparison in the supermarkets to, say, a piece of steak, or you go to a proper farm shop where it's provenant from that farm or a local farm, and you see the quality and you taste the quality and you eat the quality, you feel it. And really and truly, the one that's more expensive is actually saving you money. Because as John said with the milk, he's saving you operations, all those prescriptions, all those little white pills, all of that. So sovereignty is such a wide subject to understand. And how many people in this room have heard of legal fictions? Pretty much everyone. That's good. We don't have to cover that then. Just to say, farmers are under attack. And I think if they understood who they were and what they're not, they would have much more control. And it all comes down to the name. And this to me is absolutely vital, but it's very difficult for many people to get to grips with, and just how important it is. And the question I won't go into this now because we haven't got time, but the question I would like to ask you is, who are you? What is your name? And can you prove it? Because if you can't prove the name, and don't give me the birth certificate, because that actually tells you on there that this certificate is not something that can prove the identity of the holder. How can you prove who you are? And if you can't prove who you are, how the hell can anyone from authority say that's you? And that becomes a very big, unless of course you admit to it, unless you say, yeah, that's me. Mr. Vobes? Yes? Oh, good, I've got you in my jurisdiction now. This, I think, for landowners and what have you. Now, somebody asked me to ask about how do you get the laudable titles to your land. Pardon? Title. How do you get that? Well, you stand on a very tall mountain and you go. Again, here's a quick question. Who owns the land? The Creator. There's only, government didn't make the land. Government has taken the land. And if you're the name, if you're the legal fiction, if you go along with the whole thing, you enter their jurisdiction, you enter their reality, then that's the problem that you will have, is they will say, yes, we're above you. This is a minefield of information, and I do have videos on the channel about it. But the Creator created the land. And in law, there's the maxim, he who creates controls. Or owns, if you like. So if you've got land and someone is telling you that they have a title to it, or it's on land registry, or the government own it, if you are in their system, then that's fine. But all their system will go to a plot on a map. It doesn't actually go to a real place. It just goes to a plot on the map. The land they're talking about, but you think it's real and it's on the earth. But you as people live on the earth, on God's earth or the Creator's earth, whoever it is or whatever it is. Anyway, that's just something like that. I'll sow that as a seed because I think that's a really good way of getting out of it. And I understand, and I'm in the process of trying this myself with council tax, HMRC, and all these other things, that the government do accept that. They've actually ruled, the Supreme Court has ruled that God is above legislation. In the Bible it says you cannot have more than one master, support him or other gods. If you support God in the Bible, then you're not in the other God system. I've got some videos on that on the channel. The last thing I wanted to really talk about, which I think is the thing that we really should be focusing on now, there's so much fear, and we get it on our phones all the time. It's talked about on lots of YouTube channels. Oh my God, look what just happened! All this sort of stuff, and because it gets bums on seats. Now, of course, the UK column would never frighten anyone. It's all very genteel. Sit round with nice cups of tea and talk very politely. Although, obviously, you have to tell people what's going on, and it's very frightening. But what I feel is important is we know what we don't want. We don't want the 5G, the net zero, pylons, everyone, as part of the great grid upgrade. We don't want them spraying on our land. We don't want food shortages. We don't want poison in the water, and we don't want our children being taught how to masturbate and things like that, which is all going on. But what we seem to be doing is not saying what we do want. And I think that deep within us, whether you believe this or not, deep within us, as souls on this earth, we need to project and focus on the things we want. Even from just a simple practical thing of going, I want to see this for my children. I want to see abundance in food. I want to see that field with food in it. Because that will suggest ways to us to be able to achieve it. All the time we're going, no, I don't want this, I don't want that. No, have you seen? Look what they're doing. Come here, hold them back. We're fighting against something that's just going to happen anyway. What we need to do is just get on with it. Create the new future and not worry too much about that. Learn all the things of sovereignty. Do our best, of course, to help farmers because they need our help. As Roy was saying, they need our they They need our help. And if they knew that there was a team out there of people who could just get up and come on and pick some stuff or help them shift stuff, think how they would change. I mean, I appreciate that they've got these awful contracts with the big corporations at the moment and they're tied in. But maybe they can get things going, as Dominic was saying. I think that there is huge opportunity. We need to get into this situation because otherwise we're just sitting back, we're going to the supermarket, everything's fine, we're just chilled and we're still watching television, we're still asleep. We need to go through this hardship, and I know John will say it needs to get a lot worse before people really wake up and sniff the coffee. And, you know, we're all thinking about it, but as I said before, you know, we're all getting on a little bit. It's the young. Now, I understand there was a young couple, I don't know if they're still here, who've just started doing some... Have they gone? Got to milk the cows, you see, they do it twice a day, proper farmers. We need to get the young people involved. And I know that there are loads of young people who are in the wrong jobs. They do not know that farming exists. The press... And we're partly responsible if we're putting up videos by saying, oh, it's terrible, it's terrible. We are putting them off. Because unless we're saying it's a fantastic life, unless we're saying it's great, it's a lifestyle, yeah, the money's irrelevant. But John may not make any money much from his milk, but he gets up and there's beautiful countryside around. He's got his wonderful cows all about him. His good lady is about to bring quadruplets, apparently. The workforce for the future is about to sort of spring, which is fantastic. Well done. May not be quadruplets, maybe double that.
It's all to do with the milk.
It's all, absolutely, yeah. So just be careful on drinking that milk. You know, you might find it's, talk about fertility farming, it's very fertile milk. I think, to sort of come to bring this to an end, I think my vision is that we will start to see a lot more farming, but from unexpected sources. Unfortunately, the last 80 years to 100 years, farmers, like so many people, have been brainwashed into one type of farming. Ploughing, for example, which people have been doing for a long time, has actually been destroying the soil. And you need to not plough your farms. There's so much information. There was a guy in the 40s, before Joe Salatin was around, and he's written a book, I forget his name, Charles somebody or other, Fertility Farming. And he was somewhere in Devon, I think he was.
Not Dowding.
Not Charles Dowding. This was in the 1940s and 50s. And he had the ability... he rented a farm for a bit. He was a tenant farm, and then he bought the farm. And he said, for the first 10 years, I was destroying the farm, doing it the traditional way, and the soil was just eroding. And then he started to realise what happens in nature. And he realised that actually, in real nature, you're not digging up the soil and turning it all upside down like this. That actually, you're putting what was happening was trees and dead leaves and things were falling on it, and the mulch was actually reinvigorating the soil, and he started experiments on that and found the yields were amazing. Mind you, back in the 50s, these soils, of course, weren't so blighted by all the crap we've since put on the soil, so it needs a lot of help from things like the electroculture. So I think we are going to see this amazing resurgence. I absolutely think this is a fantastic time to be alive, to see all of this. We're all, you know, trying to work out the puzzles, but if we could see 10, 20 years down the line, I don't think the dark forces are going to win by any means. I think the reason we're seeing it so much at the moment is because they know they've got nothing left, and they're just throwing it as much as they can at us. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I think out of this time, we will start to see. And the more we talk about it, to ordinary everyday people, but the more we big it up, the more we be positive about it, that farming is a great life. You're outside, you're getting the sun, if we can move away from that capitalist, I've got to earn a lot of money so I get a bigger telly, a bigger car and have these holidays. John doesn't leave his farm. He has his piece of heaven. He doesn't need to go anywhere. Although apparently he's slipping away for sort of 7 days with the missus. The near missus. Who knows what will happen on that 7 days. But that's the thing. I think we're in for some amazing times, and we should not forget that. Obviously, we do have to be aware of what's going on, but don't hold the fear of that, because that will manifest. Whether you believe from a spiritual side, but even if you're just talking it down, you're not bringing anybody else up. And the young people will start to realise that there is a future for them. And we need to take people to farms, show them what it is, get them in, get them to hug cows, hug sheep, ride on the backs of pigs, not if they're 60 or something, but in a tiny, all this sort of stuff. I think that we have a great opportunity. Thank you so much for staying today to listen to my nonsense. Just to say, don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. And thank you for all your support if you have. Thank you. Checks in the post, exactly. Thank you very much. I know.
Perfect. Richard, I think you bring out a really, really important point, which is that the way that the information has flowed, and we've received an incredible amount of not just information, but thought, and indeed thought-provoking ideas. We all, I'm sure, feel armed to make the journey that you describe and to envision that future. But if we don't believe it, there's absolutely no chance that we will realise it. And that is what you have to do. So I think if there is a message to take away from today, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, here specifically we've been talking about farming and food security, but it applies to everything. You have to consider it, hold it in your mind, believe it, and then pursue it with all your might. So, Richard, thank you very much indeed for really great words, I think, on that. Also, critically, what Mark was talking about in terms of practical delivery of what we've been talking about, the Food Finders Hub, please do go and look at it. But also, absolutely use your initiative and think of all the things that you could do to make these situations better. So approaching farmers, creating those direct relationships, I cannot encourage you enough to be able to do that. Today would not have been at all possible without Kay and her team. Richard, I've got the names, hang on. Louise, Dave, Marcus, Joe, I remember most of them. Dave, okay. So a massive hand to the people that have. And then finally to the speakers themselves, who of course have worked very hard to prepare their presentations for today, and it is no small undertaking to do such thing and condense it. I know it might seem like a long time, but actually to put across the information that they have put together is time consuming, and it requires a lot of energy and a lot of commitment. And Mark is on a long tour, for example. John clearly has taken time out of a very, very busy life. So it is a really significant thing that people come here to do this. So please show your appreciation for the speakers themselves. Thank you very much.
And don't forget a wonderful Montara MC and
Thank you very much indeed, or hard luck. But it's been terrific. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure, I mean, there have been happy faces absolutely everywhere. It's felt very, very positive today. So I hope you all do continue your journey from here, both spiritually and actually, really, all the rest of it, and make something of this. You know, do make that difference that we have been talking about. Translate this into something that means we avoid the where are you going to get your food problem, and then use that to carry you through life and embrace other people and other things and farmers at the same time. So thank you very much for coming. Have a super evening and see you again at some point. Bye.